Captain Sarah had seen many strange things during her 15 years exploring the Outer Rim territories, but nothing quite like this. The massive creature before her every classification in the xenobiology databases. Standing nearly 30 feet tall, its scales shimmered with an otherworldly blue-green luminescence that seemed to pulse with each labored breath. What the colonists had dubbed a dragon was clearly an intelligent being, though its physiology suggested it had evolved on a world far different from Earth. The creature's voice resonated through the valley like thunder, but the translation matrix in Sarah's helmet converted the deep rumbles into words that chilled her to the bone. "Please," it said, the desperation evident even through the mechanical translation. "My people are dying. The darkness spreads and we cannot stop it." Sarah's team had received the distress signal 3 days ago while conducting a routine survey of the 442 system. The message was fragmented, transmitted on frequencies that no known species used, but the universal mathematics embedded within it clearly indicated intelligent life in distress. Against protocol, Sarah had convinced her superiors to authorize a reconnaissance mission. Now, standing in this alien valley surrounded by crystalline formations that hummed with energy, she wondered if she had made the right choice. The dragon creature before them was obviously wounded. Dark veins spread across its scales like infection, and its breathing was labored. Behind it, scattered throughout the valley, lay dozens of similar beings in various stages of what appeared to be the same affliction. Some were still moving, their voices joining in a haunting chorus that echoed off the valley walls. Others lay motionless, their scales already beginning to lose their luminescent glow. "What kind of darkness?" Sarah asked, stepping closer despite the warnings from her Dr. Martinez crackling through her comm system. The dragon's massive head turned toward her, and she found herself looking into eyes that held an intelligence that was both alien and deeply familiar. The weight of consciousness, of awareness, of fear for one's people, these were universal concepts that transcended species barriers. "The Void Plague," the dragon replied, its mental emanations causing the translation software to struggle with concepts that had no human equivalent. "It comes from between the stars, consuming not just flesh but spirit itself. We have fought it for generations, but our weapons are useless against it. Our defenses crumble. Our young ones fade before they can even spread their wings." Dr. Martinez was already scanning the creature with his portable analyzer, the device beeping frantically as it detected energy patterns unlike anything in their databases. "Captain," he said urgently, "these readings are off the charts. There's some kind of quantum disruption field emanating from the infected tissue. It's like something is eating away at the very fabric of space-time around the wound." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien world's atmosphere. If this plague could affect space-time itself, it represented a threat beyond anything humanity had encountered. Their own expansion into the galaxy suddenly seemed fragile and vulnerable in comparison to whatever force was decimating this clearly advanced civilization. The dragon continued its plea, each word heavy with the weight of a dying species. "We have watched your kind from afar, small ones. You spread across the void with a determination that amazes us. Where we have knowledge and power, you have something else. Something we do not understand but desperately need. You adapt. You survive. You find ways where there should be none." Lieutenant, Sarah's tactical officer, had been quietly scanning the surrounding area with her equipment. Now she approached with data that made the situation even more grave. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout this star system. Whatever this plague is, it's not confined to this world. I'm reading similar quantum distortions on at least 6 other planets, and the signatures are growing stronger." Sarah looked around the valley at the dozens of dying dragons, their once magnificent forms now writhing in obvious agony. These beings had clearly reached a level of technological and possibly psychic development far beyond humanity's current capabilities. Their crystalline structures suggested mastery over energy manipulation that humans could only dream of achieving. Yet they were helpless against this cosmic horror that was consuming their civilization. "Why us?" Sarah asked the dragon. "What makes you think humans can help where your own people cannot?" The dragon's response came not just as words, but as a flood of images transmitted directly into Sarah's mind through some form of psychic contact. She saw the dragon's home system as it once was. Dozens of worlds connected by streams of living energy, magnificent cities that floated in the void between planets, beings of immense power who could manipulate matter and energy with thought alone. It was a civilization that had achieved what humans still struggled to imagine. Then came the darkness. It started as a small tear in reality itself, appearing in the space between their worlds. At first, the dragons had dismissed it as a natural phenomenon, perhaps a micro-wormhole or gravitational anomaly. But the tear grew, and from it emerged something that their understanding of physics and biology alike. The void plague wasn't just a disease. It was an infection of reality itself, spreading like cracks through their perfect civilization. The dragons had thrown everything at it. Energy weapons that could crack moons, psychic barriers that could redirect the flow of time, technologies that bent the laws of physics to their will. Nothing worked. The plague adapted, evolved, consumed their defenses, and grew stronger. Worse, it seemed to feed on the very sophistication of their civilization, turning their greatest achievements into vectors for its spread. "We are too perfect," the dragon explained as the psychic images faded from Sarah's mind. "Our harmony, our unity, our mastery over the physical realm, these things that made us great also make us vulnerable. The plague uses our connections against us, spreads through our networks of power and consciousness. But your people, you are different. You are chaotic, unpredictable. You fight among yourselves, struggle with your own limitations, adapt through conflict rather than harmony. These weaknesses might be strengths against an enemy like this." Dr. Martinez was studying his readings with growing excitement and concern. "Captain, if I'm interpreting this correctly, the plague operates by creating quantum entanglement with its targets. It links their biological and consciousness patterns to some kind of void dimension, slowly drawing them into non-existence. The dragon's natural psychic abilities and their technological reliance on quantum manipulation make them perfect conduits for this process." Sarah felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. Humanity had always been the scrappy underdog in their imagined future among the stars, succeeding through determination and adaptability rather than raw power or advanced technology. Now it seemed those very qualities might be what was needed to face a cosmic horror that had brought a far more advanced civilization to its knees. The dragon raised its massive head, looking directly at Sarah with eyes that held both hope and desperation. "Will you help us, small warrior? Will your people stand against the darkness that consumes worlds?" Before Sarah could respond, her communications officer's voice crackled through the team's comm system. "Captain, I'm receiving multiple signals from our deep space monitoring network. Something big is happening in the neighboring systems. The quantum distortions are spreading and fast. According to these readings, we've got maybe weeks before whatever this is reaches the outer colonies." Sarah felt her blood run cold. The plague wasn't just threatening this alien civilization, it was heading straight for human space. The dragon's plea wasn't just a request for help, it was a warning of what was coming for all of them. Looking around at her small team of scientists and soldiers, then back at the dying civilization spread throughout the valley, Sarah made the decision that would change the course of both species' futures. "We'll help," she said, knowing that they were committing humanity to a war against something beyond their understanding. "But we'll need to know everything about this plague, and we'll need it fast." The dragon's scales flickered with what might have been relief, or perhaps hope. "Then let us share what we know before it is too late for all of us." As Sarah prepared to learn about humanity's greatest challenge yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that their species' greatest strength, their refusal to accept the impossible, was about to be put to the ultimate test. 3 weeks had passed since first contact with the dying dragon civilization, and humanity had mobilized with a speed that surprised even their allies. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship, watching through the viewports as the largest fleet in human history assembled around Earth. Ships from every colony, every corporation, every military branch had answered the call. It was unprecedented cooperation for a species known for its fractious nature. The dragon Sarah had first encountered, who called himself in his own language, had shared everything his people knew about the void plague through a painful process of psychic connection. The information had been horrifying in its implications. This wasn't just an alien disease. It was a fundamental corruption of reality itself that seemed to emerge periodically throughout the galaxy, consuming entire civilizations before disappearing back into whatever dark dimension had spawned it. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the fleet's chief, approached Admiral with her latest report. Her face was grim, marked by the sleepless nights she'd spent studying the plague samples they'd managed to obtain. "Admiral, we've confirmed our worst fears. The plague isn't just biological, it's multidimensional. It exists partially in our reality and partially in what we can only describe as negative space. Every time it consumes matter or energy, it creates a small tear between dimensions. turned from the viewport, his weathered face reflecting the weight of command. At 65, he had seen humanity's expansion from the early colony ships to their current interstellar presence. He had fought pirates, negotiated with alien traders, and managed the political complexity of a species spreading across dozens of star systems. But this was different. This was a threat to existence itself. "What about our countermeasures?" asked, though he could already read the answer in Dr. Hayes' expression. "Limited success," she admitted. "Our quantum disruption weapons can temporarily destabilize the plague's dimensional anchors, but it adapts too quickly. We managed to save 3 of the dragon colonies using concentrated electromagnetic pulse bombardments, but the plague just shifted its approach. It's learning from every attack we make." Captain's voice crackled through the comm system from her position on the planet's surface. "Admiral is requesting permission to share their complete tactical database with our AI systems. He says their people have been fighting this thing for over 2 centuries, and we need to understand every failure if we're going to succeed where they couldn't." Felt the familiar knot in his stomach that came with impossible decisions. Sharing tactical databases meant opening humanity's AI networks to direct interface with alien consciousness. The security risks were enormous, but so was the threat they faced. "Granted, Captain, but I want triple isolation protocols and our best cybersecurity teams monitoring every data transfer." The next few hours brought a flood of information that changed everything humanity thought they knew about warfare. The dragons hadn't just been fighting a plague. They had been engaged in a conflict that spanned multiple dimensions. Their enemies weren't simply organisms from another reality. They were fragments of something that had once been a civilization like their own, consumed and transformed into vectors for spreading the infection of non-existence. Commander Torres, the fleet's tactical coordinator, was the first to grasp the true horror of what they faced. "Sir, according to the Dragon records, the Void Plague doesn't just kill civilizations, it recruits them. Every species it consumes becomes part of its collective consciousness, turned into tools for finding and infecting new realities. We're not just fighting a disease, we're fighting the ghostly remains of hundreds of extinct civilizations." The implications were staggering. Earth's deep space sensors had detected the plagues advance through 17 star systems over the past month. Each infected world became a staging ground for the next attack, the plague using the absorbed knowledge and technology of its victims to adapt and grow stronger. At its current rate of expansion, it would reach the outer human colonies within 6 weeks. Dr. Martinez, who had remained on the Dragon world to continue his research, transmitted his findings with barely controlled excitement. "Admiral, I think I've found something crucial. The plague's adaptation mechanism seems to work by creating quantum entanglement with its targets, essentially copying their biological and technological patterns. But there's a limitation. It can only entangle with systems that achieve a certain level of quantum coherence." The Dragon's advanced technology actually made them more vulnerable because their entire civilization operated through quantum manipulation. Felt a spark of hope. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "Humanity's technology is crude by comparison, sir. Our computers use traditional electronics, our weapons rely on chemical and kinetic energy, our biology is chaotic and inefficient. We might actually be too primitive for the plague to properly interface with. It's like trying to infect a stone knife with a computer virus." The Dragon, who had been listening through the translation link, provided confirmation that sent ripples of excitement through the human fleet. "Your scientist speaks truth, Admiral. We observed this phenomenon with some of the less advanced species in our home system. The plague struggled to gain purchase on their simpler technologies and more chaotic biological patterns. But we dismissed this as irrelevant, believing advancement was always superior to primitiveness. We may have been wrong." Captain's team on the surface had been working with the Dragons to test this theory. "Admiral, we've been running simulations using our standard pulse rifles against plague samples. The results are encouraging. Our weapons don't provide clean energy signatures for the plague to latch onto. They're too messy, too inefficient. It's like the plague doesn't know how to adapt to our chaotic approach to technology." But knew they would need more than just technological incompatibility to win this war. The plague had consumed civilizations far more advanced than humanity, and it had learned from each victory. Even if human technology was temporarily resistant, the plague would eventually adapt. They needed a more permanent solution. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Sarah, a quantum physicist serving aboard the research vessel, made a connection that had eluded both human and Dragon scientists. "Admiral," she reported via subspace communication, "I've been analyzing the plague's dimensional signatures, and I think I understand how it moves between realities. It's not actually opening new dimensional rifts, it's exploiting existing quantum fluctuations in space-time. But those fluctuations follow patterns based on the gravitational and electromagnetic fields in each system." Frowned, "Meaning what, Lieutenant?" "Meaning we might be able to predict where it will appear next, sir. And more importantly, we might be able to redirect it." The plan that emerged over the next week was audacious even by human standards. Rather than trying to destroy the plague directly, they would attempt to trap it in a carefully constructed dimensional prison. Using humanity's crude but effective approach to space-time manipulation, they would create a series of gravitational anomalies that would force the plague into a region of space where the barriers between dimensions were strongest. And the surviving dragons provided the theoretical framework, their deep understanding of quantum mechanics essential to the plan's success. But it was human engineers who would build the actual trap, their willingness to use brute force rather than elegant solutions proving crucial. Where dragon technology sought harmony with the laws of physics, human technology simply overpowered them through sheer energy output. The construction project required every available ship in the human fleet, along with the surviving dragon vessels that could still function. They had chosen a location 3 light-years from Earth, where a cluster of neutron stars created natural gravitational distortions. Working around the clock, human and dragon crews installed massive gravitational manipulators around the neutron star cluster, creating what was essentially a 3-dimensional maze designed to trap something that existed partially outside normal spacetime. As the construction neared completion, deep space sensors confirmed that the plague had begun its final approach to human space. It had consumed 4 more civilizations during the 3 weeks of preparation, each absorption making it stronger and more adaptable. The ghost fleets of a dozen extinct species now served as its vanguard, their twisted forms barely recognizable as the proud civilizations they had once been. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the last components of the dimensional trap fell into place. Around him, the largest fleet in human history prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of both their species and possibly every other form of life in the galaxy. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Torres announced. "The Dragons confirm that the trap is operational, though they warn that we'll only get one chance. If the plague escapes the initial containment, it will adapt to our tactics and become immune to this approach." Nodded, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. In the next few hours, they would discover whether humanity's chaotic, primitive approach to problem-solving could succeed where advanced civilizations had failed. "Signal all ships," commanded. "Operation Mousehole is go." In the distance, the first signs of the plague's arrival began to appear as reality itself started to fray at the edges of the star system. The void plague arrived like a wound in reality itself, tearing through the fabric of spacetime with the casual ease of a predator that had devoured countless worlds. Admiral watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the quantum sensors screamed warnings about dimensional instabilities appearing at the edge of the star system. What emerged from those tiers' description? Twisted amalgamations of ships and organic matter that had once been proud civilizations, now serving as the plague's advance scouts. "Contact in 30 minutes, Commander Torres reported, her voice steady despite the impossibility of what they were facing. "The plague is moving faster than our models predicted. It's like it's learned to surf the gravitational waves between star systems." Captain's voice crackled through the communication array from her position near the dimensional trap. "Admiral reports that this is the largest plague manifestation his people have ever recorded. It's absorbed at least 20 different civilizations since leaving their home system, and each one has made it stronger and more adaptable." Felt the familiar calm that came before impossible battles. Throughout human history, their species had faced extinction-level threats with nothing but determination and the refusal to accept defeat. Today would be no different, even if the stakes were higher than ever before. "All ships assume position Alpha," commanded. "Remember, our job isn't to destroy this thing, it's to guide it into the trap. Hit and run tactics only. Do not let it establish quantum entanglement with our systems." The human fleet spread across the star system in a formation that would have seemed chaotic to military theorists, but made perfect sense to a species that had learned warfare through necessity rather than doctrine. Each ship operated independently, ready to adapt and improvise as the situation demanded. It was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to function without a central plan when circumstances demanded flexibility. Dr. Hayes monitored the plague's approach from her position in the fleet's science division. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive quantum field fluctuations. The plague isn't just moving through space, it's rewriting the fundamental laws of physics as it goes. Gravity, electromagnetic force, strong and weak nuclear forces, they're all being altered to serve its needs." The first contact came sooner than expected. The plague scouts emerged from dimensional rifts throughout the system, their forms shifting between matter and energy as they searched for targets. These weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were fragments of absorbed civilizations, twisted into tools for spreading the infection across reality itself. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, commanding the destroyer Relentless, made first contact with a scout that had once been part of a crystalline civilization. "Admiral, engaging hostiles. Our pulse cannons are having minimal effect, but they're not adapting to our weapons as quickly as expected. It's like they can't figure out how to interface with our technology." Allowed himself a moment of hope. The theoretical advantages of human technological primitiveness were proving real in combat. Where the plague had easily adapted to the elegant quantum weapons of advanced civilizations, it struggled with humanity's crude but effective approach to warfare. "All ships concentrate fire on the dimensional anchor points," ordered. "Don't try to destroy the scouts, just disrupt their connection to the plague's main body." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships darted between dimensional rifts, using their crude but reliable engines to avoid the reality-warping effects that surrounded the plague manifestations. Meanwhile, the surviving dragon ships provided crucial support, their deep understanding of quantum mechanics allowing them to predict where the plague would emerge next. Psychic voice resonated through the command network, providing tactical information that no human sensor could have detected. "The main body approaches, small warriors. It comes through the Great Rift, bringing with it the absorbed knowledge of our enemies. Be ready. It will not underestimate your species as it did ours." When the plague's main manifestation finally emerged, it was larger than anything the dragons had described. Stretching across thousands of kilometers, it resembled a cosmic cancer that consumed light and matter alike. At its center, could see the twisted remains of what had once been magnificent civilizations. Cities turned inside out, ships fused with organic matter, entire worlds compressed into concentrated points of malevolent intelligence. "My God," Dr. Hayes whispered, her scientific composure finally cracking. "Admiral, the quantum signatures are off the charts. This thing isn't just consuming matter and energy, it's absorbing the very concepts that define those civilizations. Their languages, their cultures, their dreams, all of it twisted into tools for spreading the infection." Felt the weight of what they faced, but also the familiar surge of defiance that had carried humanity through every impossible challenge. "Signal all ships. Operation Mousehole begins now. Lead that thing into the trap." What followed was the most chaotic battle in human history. Ships from across the human fleet darted in and out of the plague's influence, drawing its attention toward the neutron star cluster where the dimensional trap waited. The plague responded with fury, sending waves of absorbed civilizations against the human fleet. Ships that had once explored distant galaxies now served as weapons of extinction, their crews long since consumed and replaced by the plague's malevolent intelligence. Captain's team, working directly with the dragon survivors, managed to stay ahead of the plague's attempts to adapt to human tactics. "Admiral, it's working. The plague is following our ships toward the trap, but it's learning our movement patterns. We need to keep changing our approach before it figures out what we're doing." The breakthrough came when Lieutenant, the quantum physicist who had first theorized about the trap, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, the plague's adaptation mechanism has a weakness. It needs time to analyze new quantum signatures before it can interface with them. Our chaotic approach to technology is buying us that time, but only as long as we keep changing our tactics faster than it can adapt." Grinned fiercely. Constant adaptation and improvisation weren't just tactics for humanity, they were cultural imperatives. "All ships implement protocol chaos. No predetermined attack patterns, no coordinated formations. Every ship acts independently. Confuse this thing until we get it where we want it." The human fleet dissolved into apparent chaos, each ship attacking from different angles and using different weapon combinations. It was the antithesis of military doctrine. but it worked. The plague, accustomed to fighting civilizations that relied on coordination and efficiency, couldn't adapt quickly enough to counter humanity's deliberate unpredictability. Slowly, inexorably, the plague was drawn toward the neutron star cluster where the dimensional trap awaited. The dragons had done their work well. The gravitational manipulators created a maze of space-time distortions that would theoretically contain something that existed partially outside normal reality. Trap activation in 60 seconds, Tors announced. All ships prepare for dimensional shockwave. As the plague approached the trap's activation point, it seemed to realize what was happening. The massive entity began to withdraw, its various components trying to retreat to the dimensional rifts they had emerged from, but had anticipated this. Now, Captain, trigger the secondary charges. Across the star system, carefully placed gravitational bombs detonated simultaneously, sealing the dimensional rifts and trapping the plague in normal space-time. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the plague writhed against the closing trap, its absorbed civilizations crying out in a chorus of despair that transcended language barriers. Activation successful, Dr. Hayes reported, her voice filled with amazed relief. The plague is contained within the dimensional matrix. It's trapped between the neutron stars with no way to escape to other realities. But the victory came with a cost. The dimensional shockwave from the trap's activation rippled across the star system, damaging ships and creating space-time distortions that would take decades to fully understand. More troubling, the plague wasn't destroyed, merely imprisoned in a region of space where the barriers between dimensions were too strong for it to breach. Psychic voice carried both gratitude and warning. You have done what we could not, brave humans. The plague is contained, but it lives still. It will spend eternity trying to escape, learning from this defeat. Your descendants must guard this prison, for if it ever breaks free, it will be immune to the tactics that defeated it today. Admiral looked out at the trapped plague, its malevolent form writhing within the gravitational maze that held it prisoner. Around the fleet, ships counted their damage and their losses, while scientists began the long process of studying what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced extinction and found a way to survive, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the chaotic determination that defined their species. Signal Earth and all colonies, commanded. The plague is contained. Begin establishment of permanent monitoring stations around the prison zone, and send a message to the surviving dragon worlds. Tell them they're welcome in human space. After today, we're allies for life. As the immediate crisis passed, reflected on what this victory meant for both species. Humanity had proven that sometimes the crude solution was the correct one, that adaptation and chaos could triumph where elegance and order failed. The dragons had learned that perfection wasn't always strength, and that sometimes survival required embracing the very flaws you had tried to eliminate. The dragon's plea had reverberated through the valley 3 months ago, a desperate cry for help from a dying civilization. Today, that plea had been answered not with advanced technology or superior firepower, but with humanity's greatest gift, the stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. In the weeks that followed, as joint human-dragon teams worked to establish permanent containment protocols around the plague prison, a new alliance formed that would reshape the galaxy. The dragons shared their knowledge of advanced physics and quantum mechanics, while humans contributed their expertise in adaptation, improvisation, and the art of fighting impossible odds. The void plague remained trapped in its dimensional prison, a constant reminder of what waited in the dark spaces between realities. But for the first time in centuries, both species faced the future with hope rather than fear. They had learned that sometimes the greatest strength came not from perfection, but from the willingness to remain gloriously, chaotically, imperfectly alive. The dragon's plea had been answered, and in doing so, humanity had discovered that their greatest weakness, their refusal to accept limitations, was actually their greatest strength. In a universe full of wonders and horrors beyond imagination, sometimes the most important quality was simply the determination to keep fighting, no matter how impossible the odds might seem.